Today, on Pat's Car Garage, installing the power steering cooler. You'll find this cooler on the heavier of the W202 cars, usually the C280, C36, and C43, and if you're one of the rare few with a C55, that too. But yeah, basically this is just a little loop that goes out in front of the condenser, goes around one of the fans, and it helps keep the power steering cool. Do you really need a power steering cooler? Well, a lot of heavier cars are going to have one, but the C220 doesn't, and I suspect the other base models don't either. But I mean, you know, since they threw this in for free with the transmission cooler I bought at the junkyard, I'm going to install it. And if you don't believe me about the transmission cooler, then you can have a sneak preview at the next, one of the next videos, not the next one, but this is a transmission cooler straight off of a C36 AMG. But since I'm due for a transmission service pretty soon anyway, I'm gonna wait to install this until I gotta do the transmission service at the same time, and film both, of course. So this is gonna go back on the shelf of many parts. And now the first order of business is going to be to enable head protection mode, which of course Mercedes calls raising the hood to the service position. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And for those of you that maybe don't know that your car can do this, well, now you will learn something new. There you go. And now the hood is locked all the way up. Well, the power just blew out. Oh, there you go, it's back. We're having a massive storm right now, so this might happen a couple of times.
Here I'm just running a self-tapping screw through a hole already stamped out in the metal. I'll be using that hole to secure the cooler on the bottom.
Well, it's that time of the year on Pat's Car Garage where we use duct tape to ghetto rig a tool to help us get the job done. So what I need to do is I need to tape my self-tapping screw so I can run it. And there's a little hole already in the sheet metal where the headlight mounts to. There's a little hole there already present. However, it's very hard to reach and hold on to at the same time. So I'm going to tap the screw to the... I'm going to tape the screw to the socket as such. And I'm going to put it on my wrench, on my ratchet rather, my little one, the smallest one I got. And I should be able to tap it this way. Because you also have to move the You also have to move the radiator a little bit to the side just to get enough access to that little hole. It's hard to see, like I can't even see what I'm doing, so don't expect me to be able to film it, but just believe me that it's there.
Okay, this method does seem really stupid, but it did end up working, so that settles the top mounting. However, you don't need to see me, like, try to screw that thing in, so I'm gonna skip this whole part. Okay, so after a lot of struggling, I finally got it in. It's not bolted down completely yet, but it's not jiggling around, which is perfect. And you also want to make sure that if you have the auxiliary fans, it's not spinning, it's not hitting the power steering cooler. There's not a lot of space, but there is enough. That's what matters. They gotta spin freely. Now is the time to put the front of the car back together since nothing else needs to be done there. I will tighten the cooler with everything reinstalled so I can give it a perfect fit. I didn't reinstall the washer fluid bottle at this point since I'll need the extra space to comfortably reach the steering gearbox. Since the reassembly is just the opposite of this assembly, I'll skip the rest of this part. So I cut 3 little pieces of hose just to act as bump stops for the top cross member. I'm gonna put them around the power steering cooler where they touch that cross member, and 3 zip ties just to keep them in place. So I just cut 2 slits in here, one down here and one up here. This will let the tubes pass right through here. And here's a close-up of the installation of the cooler. So the pipes come in through here. Got a little bit of duct tape going on over there because you don't want to get any water right here because that's where the connectors for the fans are. So just, a little bit of duct tape since I cut that area open to fit the pipes, just to keep it nice and dry. Got my good old fuel hose here that's just glued on to seal a big ass gap that's right there. Don't know why it's there, but now it's sealed. But anyway, so yeah, it comes down over here under the fan. That's where one of the little bolts are. And I'm using a little piece of fuel hose just to, not have it directly on the metal or anything. And then comes around and I got little pieces of fuel hose here, zip tied. I'm probably a bit too close for the camera to focus actually. Okay, here you go. So yeah, here I've got a little piece of fuel hose just to prevent it from rubbing metal on metal against the cross member. Same story on the other side. Ended up only using 2 pieces rather than 3. And once you've got the little protective grill back on, you can hardly even tell anything's going on back here. Well, obviously except for the duct tape. But, keep in mind that when you reinstall the grill, just make sure that your fans spin freely and they don't rub anywhere on the edge. And of course, if they don't rub anywhere on the edge, it also means that you've centered it correctly and it looks proper. But yeah, next up, connecting the hoses, because now the cooler's installed, but it's not cooling anything. But first, I want to give a quick review of this awesome hose that I found. It's made by a company called Durale Performance, Durale Performance, I don't know. But this hose is absolutely fantastic. It's an actual oil hose. It's an actual oil hose, which is rated for 300 psi, 3/8 inch ID, and there's 25 feet of it, which I bought for $70, which is super cheap. But this hose, it's fantastic. It's super flexible. It's really, really, really thick. It is fantastically thick, very flexible, a really awesome hose. And I bought 25 feet of it, even though I need way less than that because, can't ever have too much hose. Compare this to like a crappy little fuel hose here, and the difference is, it's quite staggering. The top hose is way thicker, way higher quality. If you need hose, get this one. It's great. So while you watch me size my hoses, allow me to explain the routing with some helpful diagrams. The current setup looks as such. The return hose simply goes from the gearbox back to the power steering pump. This is the first hose I am going to size and cut. I made sure to have plenty of slack on the bottom since I need to allow the engine to move without pulling on this hose. I installed and tightened the clamp on the cooler side, and I had the hose near the pump. The goal is to do a quick swap and jam a bolt into the old line as fast as possible. Next, I size this hose and clamp it to the cooler end. This one can be sized exactly since it doesn't move around. To mitigate vibration abrasion on the green hose, I put a few layers of duct tape where it touches the AC hose. To mitigate vibration abrasion on the yellow hose, I passed it through a front sway bar bushing I had left over. It's the outer front sway bar bushing for this chassis, and it actually fits the hose perfectly. The final step is obviously to install the pump end of the yellow hose and tighten the clamp. Here's what the final routing looks like. Okay, so here's a shot at the final installation. Here we are at the cooler end. The bottom pipe goes underneath next to the AC and pops back up and goes up to the reservoir. Whereas this pipe here, this comes from the power steering pump, and you can see I'm using the little sway bar bushing here just to make sure that if anything vibrates there, it doesn't rub directly on the hose. And then that goes and connects to the power steering pump. So now I just have to put back the windshield washer bottle. So now it's time to wrap this up and test it out. Make sure you fill your power steering reservoir, but keep in mind there is a lot of air in the system now. I'm going to start my car a few times, and initially the pump will start making a really weird noise. It's just the air being forced through the system, back into the reservoir, and being sucked up by the pump. When you hear the noise, stop the engine and let the bubbles settle in the reservoir. Keep cycling the engine like this until the power steering stops being noisy, and then do a final top up of the reservoir.